Warning: although I will attempt to be as modest as possible, this video will contain graphic references. Viewer discretion is advised. Now, I'm going to be dealing with a lot of topics, and I'm not going to be speaking about the moral implications throughout. This video is mainly speaking about the physical and mental implications of these things. So just to be clear, from a moral standpoint, things like fornication, masturbation, perversion, pornography, etc. are all mortal sins that will condemn a man to hell barring a conversion. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, we can actually get into the video. This video centers around the hormonal changes in the body and how sexual activity, normal or perverse, affects and is affected by these hormones. I will endeavor to explain how a population becomes perverse and, to a lesser degree, lazy and effeminate. The study of hormones is called endocrinology, and I encourage you to look into endocrinological papers about any of the claims that I make in this video. The three key hormones I want to discuss are testosterone, estrogen, and prolactin. Although many other hormones do play roles in these bodily functions. Now, beginning with the male processes. When a human male is excited in this way, he begins to produce testosterone and some estrogen. Testosterone is key to this sort of male function, but it appears that the body does need some levels of estrogen to accomplish these aims effectively. However, an overabundance of estrogen has been shown to throw a monkey wrench into the functionality of the male operation of excitement. Though I note, estrogen is burned off by physical activity, so in normal sexual relations, this would not be much of a problem. This perfectly brings me to the topic of masturbation. When a male masturbates, it is usually the case that he has some image before his eyes, either real or imagined. Pleasure is his goal, so it likely often comes to pass that he wishes to prolong his session. However, our anatomy is not cut out for that because as the pleasure continues, estrogen continues to build, and he will find himself no longer physically interested in the ordeal. But he still desires the pleasure to some degree. And when he is in this state, which properly is called debauched, he is comparable to a drunk man who cannot reason correctly. In other words, he's easily swayed and suggestible. His mind races to find something else to interest him, to keep the pleasure going, maybe a different woman or a different type of woman. Something simple starting off, but as I'm sure you could well see, after routine sessions, the subject male will tend to slide down a slippery slope of perversions, fetishes, and obscure desires. What's more, he's building up within himself a hefty deal of estrogen, which is not meant to be in the male body in such high amounts, and upon completion of his perverted deed, the body releases high amounts of prolactin, which makes him tired and docile, not in any condition to exercise to burn off all that estrogen. This leaves the subject not only becoming more and more perverted as time goes on, but he becomes lazy and feminine, especially if the subject begins these sessions at or before puberty. Feminine features could grow alongside male features depending on the frequency of these actions. In my opinion, this is why in times gone by, masturbation was simply called the sin of effeminacy. This lethargy, softness, and sloth could easily lead to depression, and is at least some reason as to why the mental health of the world is in such sharp decline in conjuncture with the proliferation of pornography at our fingertips. Whatever disgusting thing you could imagine, the vast majority of people in the so-called free world could view in graphic detail in mere moments. This is in stark contrast to even more recent earlier periods of human history, where lewd imagery was in general increasingly more and more difficult to find the further you go back. And now I will briefly discuss the female functionality. According to my research, testosterone has not conclusively been shown to affect a woman's sexual performance, so I will leave it out of this part. although I will note that it may indirectly aid in that function by boosting energy and confidence. Women release estrogen as they begin to be excited sexually, and this facilitates the operation of their bodies for this purpose. Women do not have to worry about being active in the same way as men, as they are naturally designed to be more placid in the natural act of procreation. This is perhaps some of the reason as to why women aren't typically as perverted as men, but there is still something to be said about the women who indulge in masturbation regularly. Firstly, they do also reach this state of a debauched mind and can think weird and outlandish things, or even like males, desire wild perversities. And second, when the female reaches the peak of her pleasure, a pseudo-conclusion, there is also a large amount of prolactin released into her body. And since she can achieve multiple pseudo-conclusions in a single perverted session, this would lead to an abundance of prolactin. This can cause the perverted female to be perhaps just as lethargic and lazy as her male counterpart, and her body may go through other adverse reactions as well. Listen up and listen good. When you use the body in a manner contrary to its function, you will get malfunction. When you use the generative function of the body against its implicit design, i.e., the creation of new generations, you're going to have problems. It's as simple as that.